Hi everyone, Heather here from the California After School Network, joined by Michael Funk from the California Department of Education. And with our wonderful special guest this week from Woodcraft Rangers, we're really excited to be joined by Julie, Helen, and Danny this week. Thanks for joining us. So we'll jump right in. Today is our 15th Fireside Chat. So excited for that milestone and to continue to share with you updates in this format. And we'll, like I said, we'll jump right in. So Michael, I'm gonna pull up on my screen in just a moment some of the FAQs that came from the Expanded Learning Division last week. And I know we have some important updates on that. So while I'm pulling that up, anything you wanna say to kind of preface this before we jump into the questions?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So I think the last Fireside Chat, I was in a park, and we had Ed Venture Moore on the call. But I think I had actually was reading text from what was approved by the Department of Finance in consultation with the governor's office and from the superintendent's office here at CDE. Now, in the space in between, then we discovered where there was things could have been worded a bit more clearly and a bit more precisely, and we're still getting some questions here and there and feedback. So we thought we'd just go right to the screen on the CDE website. And this is the COVID-19 frequently asked questions, which is additional feedback from the Trader Bill SB 98 guidance that you'll find on the website. Both are really important, both are relevant. We've spent quite a bit of time talking about the SB 98 flexibilities. Let me just say also, just before we dig into this, I heard from my staff, one of the biggest wins that I think we were able to achieve is for the first time ever, being able to extend ACES and 21st Century grants another 6 months. So if you had any unspent funds, you had the flexibility to spend those between now and December 31st. But it's required, if you're the grantee of a school district or a charter, or if you happen to be a nonprofit organization that has one of our 21st Century grants, we need you to fill out the grant extension form. I've heard that many of them have not come back in, and if those don't come in, then we're not going to be able to extend your grant. So that's just, please take care of that. It's a paperwork. And if you're unclear what to do, please reach out to the staff here at the California Department of Education. We will help you out. We'll walk you through it, coach you through it. Everything short of driving you the form down to your office or your home, we'll do. So Heather, these are the questions that primarily came up when the governor announced that if a county is on a watch list, that county will be prohibited from doing in-person instruction on campuses unless there's a waiver granted, and that has to be approved by the county Office of Public Health. And that's where the waiver comes from. Be mindful that I realize you might be watching here and your county might not be on the watch list, but still these are good things to keep in mind. And of course, we're in a great period of flux and flexibility as COVID rates go up and down, and counties all negotiate this individually within the counties and school districts. So with that, Heather, would you read the first question, and then we'll pop open the answer.
Yeah, so, and just so you all know, this link to get you straight to this page so you don't have to go searching for it on the CDE page will be in the description. Whether you're accessing this video through the CAN website or YouTube, you can find the link to this exact web page in the description. And we'll start with question 1. So if a campus is closed for in-person instruction and operating in a distance learning mode, can the campus be used by the local education agency and or the community-based organization to operate an in-person program of any type using ACES 21st Century Elementary Middle and 21st Century Assets funding? And if you click on the question, the answer shows.
Yes, this is allowable. However, the program would need to work with the school to determine campus operability In addition, if a location that is off the school campus is being considered for use, excuse me, the location also needs to be approved by the LEA, Lead Educational Agency, in consultation with public health officials. The California Department of Education approval of the off-campus location is required. The off-site program form PDF is located on the CDE website at the link. One of the things that comes up immediately is, and has come up a lot, is, well, if a county office of county public health office needs to approve in-person instruction for a school and they have closed the campus, then why are expanded learning programs allowed to go on? It's a complicated answer, and the fact is that who gives exact permission is likely to vary county by county, because different counties and different counties' offices of public health are taking different levels of involvement in this. But in short, the Department of Finance is putting expanded learning more in the broad category of licensed childcare, in the sense of permissions and access and service to kids. And that is largely due to the next question.
Great. So question number 2, if a campus is closed for in-person instruction and the LEA is operating in a distance learning mode, can the campus be used by the LEA and/or CBO to operate a program to serve the school-age children of critical infrastructure workers and use expanded learning funds to operate that program?
Yes, this is allowable and is a local decision. In addition, school-age children of critical infrastructure families from outside of the LEA may also be served by the program. Students in foster care or students that are homeless must be given priority access. As space allows, the expanded learning program needs to also serve other eligible students from the LEA area, in addition to serving school-age children of critical infrastructure workers from outside the LEA area. These programs should follow the same health and safety guidelines outlined in Executive Order N4520, located on the Department of Social Services website. The Senate bill provided the same flexibility to both ACES and 21st CCLC elementary school programs. So during the executive order, only ACES funding and grants could be used for this purpose. Now, because of SB 98, 21st Century Elementary and Middle and ACES can be used to serve children of critical infrastructure workers. Notice we're not using the word childcare. We talked about that before. Licensed childcare is a very different thing. And if you have additional questions about the specifics of this, you can contact your regional team serving your region, the county office, or CDE staff.
All right, and so that brings us to our final question, number 3. Many schools and districts are considering offering on-campus, in-person services for the most vulnerable students, i.e. special education, English learners, homeless, foster youth, etc. To implement this model, some LEAs have asked district or CBO expanded learning staff to be on campus with instructional aides to support the students while they participate in distance learning as defined in SB 98, statutes of 2020, or other enrichment activities.
Yes, this is allowable and is a local decision. Expanded learning funds can be used to pay staff who support students who are engaged in an LEA distance learning program that counts towards instructional minutes. These programs should follow the same health and safety guidelines outlined in Executive Order N4520. So this is worded very precisely for a reason. There have been concerns about whether or not expanded learning staff can be involved supporting children while they're involved in activities that count towards the instructional minutes. Is this supplanting? Is this something else? Is this allowable? Because we come from this time where there was a clear distinction between the school day and after school. And the whole purpose of SB 98 was to take away any notion of when the school the expanded learning staff could work. There are no restrictions as to what day or what hours of the day. And something that just came up recently, it also waived, SB 98 waived the fact that the after school program or the expanded learning program, if it's a base grant, had to operate on every day that school was in session, whether it was distance or not. And that's also waived. So there could be a number of local circumstances that would make sense for that kind of flexibility. We're getting a lot of questions about that now, but just know that in the question, when it says distance learning as defined in SB 98, that means when students are involved in distance learning, that counts towards instructional minutes. The definition of that in SB 98 is that if they're participating with something online and the teacher's not present, that's called asynchronous learning. But the assignment has to be designed by and assigned by a certificated teacher. If that's the case, the minutes can count towards instructional minutes, and they can be supported by an expanded learning staff, just like they might be at home being supported by a parent. Okay, so with that, I think that's a lot of technical stuff. I think it'll be helpful just to get into a conversation here with our friends from Woodcraft Rangers. And welcome, Julie, Danny, and Helen. I've had the privilege of being involved and being at events hosted by Woodcraft Rangers. They are a program with a long arc of rich history in the Los Angeles area and are doing amazing, impactful work right now during COVID. And Julie, rather than me kind of tip the hands towards your story, tell us a little bit about what's been going on for Woodcraft, especially in the last month or so, and tell us a little bit about what all the stuff I just read in SB 98 has meant for you and your organization.
Sure. I think more than anything, right, the flexibility that's been afforded to these programs has been really important, right? The data has, as we're looking at engagement data as we get further into the pandemic, our goals have always been about staying connected to parents and providing the most meaningful engagement to students. And as we know, there's been a real struggle with engagement, right? Not only during the academic day, but in expanded learning. And so we've spent the last, really 4 months of this, 5 months, how far are we into it, right? But continuing to utilize the opportunity that these kinds of flexibility and these local control decision parameters provide for us to be able to test, right, to beta test, to try new opportunities, right, new programs and new models to determine what really works in this modality of digital learning, because it's different, right? It's different, and the realities of what kids are able to achieve is different, right? So that's really been the focus of we've really used the ramp, kind of the runway to the new school year as a beta test, right? We've been testing a lot of things to determine not only how we can maximize student engagement, but how we can just keep families connected, because I think we have a serious concern about kids being disconnected and the consequences of that.
So what does that look like, Julie, when every district is now charged with filling out their learning continuity and attendance plan? And one of those factors is specifically if a student drops off of distance learning and is absent from distance learning, the district has to have a plan articulated as to how they're going to re-engage that family. How could Woodcraft play a role in that, or how have you played a role in that more specifically?
Yeah, and just for a little context, we have a variety of partners, right? We partner with LAUSD, with the Garvey Elementary School District, with several charter partners throughout Los Angeles County. So we're serving about 75 sites, just for a little bit of context. And we're seeing different things with different partners, right? And it's the beauty and the challenges of the moment, right? But it allows districts to make decisions that are best for their communities, which I think is really, really important right now. So as far as the connectivity piece, in the beginning of the pandemic, that was our biggest priority, because all of our partners made slightly different decisions. And, this is very new territory. So there were concerns about online safety, all kinds of things. So we saw, right, as we're learning this vernacular about asynchronous and synchronous, right, we saw partners that were on both ends of that spectrum and everywhere in between. So in order for us, so we really identified first that staying connected to families was going to be most critical, but we also anticipated the digital divide and kind of expected that that was going to be really, really challenging for a variety of reasons that I think are well documented at this point. So we developed first a program called Birch, which is a SMS, the text-based platform that we, within about 3 weeks, which felt like a long time at the time, feels like a very short time now, we really pivoted a third of our team to developing content that was specifically designed for SMS delivery to support whatever caregiver was guiding the learning at home. Because we knew that any digital learning has to be successfully guided by a caring adult. Or a sibling in some cases for many of our families. So that we've been on that program now for 4 or 5 months, however long the tenure of this pandemic is, minus about 2 weeks. And we've been able to stay tethered to over 5,000 families doing that. But that was our first goal, is to really connect with those families. So it gives us a mechanism to be able to follow up with those families, to be able to flag critical need. It's a two-way, they can message us. So for our partners, I think that's a really valuable mechanism, right, for them to be able to stay tethered to those families. And when those families drop off and you don't hear from them, we actually have, right, 5,000 on that platform that we can shoot an individual message, though they're getting group text, right, on a regular basis. And then right past then, we started doing digital learning and other kinds of things, but we started with just staying connected to families because we knew that the risk was so immense and so possible, right, for kids just to drop off the radar.
So Helen, you're the director of digital learning. Is that the correct title? You've been with Woodcraft for 12 years.
Yes.
Tell us about your work and what some of the things you're excited about that you've been able to do.
Yes, definitely. So how Julie just mentioned, in the beginning, we were doing, we started off because of the different difficulties with being in touch with students. We started with pre-recorded videos that included different challenges and competitions. We did that for about 2 months, I think the first 2 months, April, May, all the way through mid-June. We saw some flaws in that because without the mentor connection, because they were just pre-recorded videos on YouTube, what we saw there was that there wasn't as much engagement because there was no mentor guidance. And we were doing it for specifically middle school and high school students. So even that, I think, even gave us a bigger challenge because guiding them and getting them excited about our program is what our mentors do, and them not having that connection was hard. And so what we pivoted to during the summer was to doing some more live connections with kids, so some more synchronous learning. So we did Zoom calls, and so we had, and in the summer we did elementary and middle school programming and high school. So we had it for all of our students. And so for elementary, what we really did was we had by grade levels, and then they had a different variety of clubs that they were able to sample from. And so elementary students got a little bit of everything throughout the summer. So we did a 4-week program where their mentors and their club leaders were guiding them through different clubs, which we saw definitely more engagement. And then for our middle school students, they were able to choose the clubs that they wanted to try out. So whether it was basketball or dance or cooking or cosmetology, students were able to then go online to a class with their mentor, and we also saw more engagement with the middle school students there. And I think one of the ones that we saw the most engagement with was our high school, and they did some more, better classes, such as driver's ed. I know they did driver's ed, and we had tutoring, and so I know driver's ed was very, very popular with our students, and so we were very excited for that and to continue that into the school year. And then we're just very excited about what we're going to be offering this new school year, which is we are going to be still offer our different clubs with the mentors guiding them throughout our classes throughout for elementary, middle school, and high school students. And so we're just excited to stay connected to our students and to continue guiding them and getting them excited about our program.
I'm not sure I want you to tell us how you did driver's ed over Zoom. My mind is still working on that a little bit. What are a couple examples of some of the clubs that just come to mind that the kids really, you mentioned clubs a lot or different things with the mentors. Give us a couple concrete examples.
Yeah, so we did, one of the most popular ones I think was dance for our middle school students. They learned different routines, and their club leader was teaching them, and we opened it up to all of our students, and they were able to log on, so they got to meet different students from different schools and come on with, we had 2 club leaders on, and they were teaching a dance routine, and students were able to learn it. And we actually are collecting all of those routines right now, and we're gonna be putting them together because I think they learned 2 different routines in those 4 weeks, which was pretty exciting. I know that with our elementary students, art and science were very popular. And what we did was we also learned throughout the summer and those 4 weeks is that we didn't start off sending materials, but by the second week, we realized that sending the students the materials that they needed would be more efficient. And so we ended up sending materials for the culminating event at the end of our summer. So we sent art materials, science materials, and they were able to do a project with their club leader online. And we saw great engagement there as well. I think they did, I'm not exactly sure which art activity they did, but they also did a science project. And we have videos of all of it that we're collecting right now to put together a small video to show the great work that the students were doing, that the club leaders were doing. And so we're just excited to keep it going and sending out materials and having different clubs and enrichment activities for students.
That's great.
Michael, if I could, I'd love to tease out one thing that Helen said, just a couple of practical things. What we've also noticed, and this is where the flexibility has really helped us, is the ratios. To really meaningfully engage, we find that it actually needs more than one club leader. So you can have one that's actually doing the instruction. We've actually seen successful side coaching as well, but in order to really maintain that level of engagement, we've really noticed that that a club needs more than one leader. So I mean, just teasing out a couple of like practical things that we've learned from Helen's beautiful description. And then the laddering of tactical, tangible kits to online learning has been really successful for us too.
So the flexibility you're referring to is not only when we SB 98 waived the 20-to-1 ratio. I mean, you could have always served with a lower ratio. I mean, but we just did that to be really concrete, that the ratio was no longer relevant. But the real flexibility is we waived the grant reduction process. So you didn't have to worry about hitting a certain attendance benchmark to retain your grant. And I want to just keep drawing people back to these specific points of flexibility. So Danny, you're the Director of Expanded Learning, and you have been with Woodcraft 15 years, which is very inspiring. Tell us about your role in your work and whatever you'd like us to know that would be helpful to others.
Got it. So yeah, I just wanted to start off by saying Helen forgot one important piece, and I'll let her come back to it about Camp on Delivery, which I think was great, and so she can definitely touch on that after. But as a Director of Expanded Learning and working with Helen and our learning department, we continue to provide staff development trainings for all of our staff. In this time, we know that as our students and our families have had to pivot into digital learning, you know, we know our staff need that support into adapting. And so some of the framework that was developed for in-person expanded learning has changed. And so with the summertime and some of the practices that we put into place, we've looked into really providing some training to our staff. And so we are providing staff for our training in how to support and redefining enrichment, how to focus our relationship buildings with our students, because we know regardless of the content that's being exposed to the students, the content that's being shared is the way that you capture them at first, but how you sustain that student in your program is through your relationship building. And so we are really providing our team with a lot of social emotional learning support, so that they know the intentionality behind it, so that they know that ultimately, if you are a new club leader who just joined the expanded learning universe, or you've been someone that's been with us for 10, 12, 15 years, that there are resources that we will provide to enhance the way that you deliver your skill, your passion to the students. And so we're really investing time into providing this training to our staff through Zoom live sessions. We've also invested in a learning management system that'll help systemize our standard operating procedures that we will be sharing with our staff. And I feel like that's going to help synchronize not just the way that we share training, but the way that we expose it to all of our staff. And so that's some of the work that we've done around staff development. We're going to continue to do a lot of this in partnership with our learning department. And one of the other pieces that has helped us in designing these trainings is just listening to our students. The way we collect surveys, the way that we reach out to our families and our principals has not stopped. Since March 13th, the very famous Friday the 13th date, we've continued to assess information from our partners to assess and see what's working, what's not working, and how we can make those adjustments. And so I'm very proud of working with our team. Someone like Helen, who has really adjusted our summer learning programs, our Camp on Delivery programs, and our expanded learning programs to not only adjust to the different age groups that we serve, but to our staff has been incredible.
You know, we hold on to this, excuse me, this dilemma that one of our strengths in expanded learning is the fact that so many of our staff have close proximity to the families. Many of the staff are from the neighborhoods. Many of the staff speak the languages of the families. They're just close. They're known. Many of the staff know the families. They know where these people are, and yet at the same time, in the whole educational system, let's face it, expanded learning staff are probably the lowest paid. Probably have the least access to high quality health insurance, especially if they're line staff. So, you know, if it wasn't a pandemic, we'd be thrilled at the fact that so many districts are asking our staff to get closer with families and be connected. And yet now we have this pandemic, and some of our staff are maybe the least protected in terms of their experience and their health insurance and these types of things. There's folks that are calling for some type of increase in pay if staff are going to show up on campus. There are folks, organizations that are exploring very concrete ways on how they plan to keep their staff safe. So we're not going to be stuck in distance learning. We don't know how long, but we're not going to be stuck forever. There will be a time when staff will have in-person contact again with kids. What have you talked about as an organization to grapple with this really challenging situation?
I'll start, Danny, and then I'll hand off to you. But, you know, I think that as an organization, we've held some town halls with our team. We've sent a lot of surveys to our team. We want to assess their comfort level and in both the digital sphere and in person. And right now we're really being cautious about how we're engaging in in-person programs and just tracking constantly the research about best practices and safety. But to your point about health insurance and pay, these are things we're wrestling with because we think those are fair points. They're fair points. We've made a decision as an institution, and again, you know, much of the flexibility and the knowing that our grants aren't going to be reduced gives us an opportunity to put the resources to ensure that our staff are safe into these programs. And we've made a decision as an institution that even as a part-time staff, we will not send an uninsured employee on site. And that's a commitment that we make, whether we have to provide that or whether we help, you know, educate our staff into what resources are available. We've made that decision. But you know, from a budgeting perspective, we're also trying to figure out, right, in order for us to come back live, how we can sustain those to serve more students hopefully in the spring, should we come back. So Danny, I just want to get us started, but I'm ready, you're ready.
Yeah, but we've had taken a lot of those challenges into consideration, and we're working, and Julie's doing a great job of, and myself and Helen doing a great job of partnering with our local districts to ensure that these questions are being asked, and so that we stand there as advocates for our staff who might have some insecurities about being on site with some of the COVID concerns. And so while the flexibility provided by the state is there, has helped us design the way that we're going to be providing our digital learning in clusters. And that flexibility will allow us to engage and maximize the way that we serve our students in a digital way in smaller communities. And then some of that funding will be available for us to possibly provide fair and appropriate wages for our staff that might work in-person programs. And so all of those design conversations have, and will continue to happen within our team. And we understand that, and our team is very flexible in how the districts are getting information down from the state, from CDC, because we know they're having to change. And so we know that it's a domino effect that then, affects us as CDOs. And so we are making those adjustments and working closely with our partners. And we appreciate the communication that's coming down from our partners so that we can make those changes. But ultimately, we're very appreciative of the flexibility that's in place that allows us to have provide advocacy and provide support for our staff when they are concerned in these moments.
Well, I want to thank you for really taking that seriously, the safety of your staff and making sure they're prepared. That's a huge discussion right now across the state of California. I can only imagine that many leaders like yourselves across the state are wondering how you're doing those things, how you're educating staff to have access to insurance. I mean, the commitment to not send a staff person on campus without insurance coverage is something I want to amplify. And I'm sure maybe some folks are going to have questions. So rather than inundate you leaders here who are trying to do your best and manage your program, I want to hear from any one of you. Maybe you can send me some specific information about what you're doing, and then people can address their questions, send their questions here to CDE, and we'll make sure that we put something out. And maybe if it's tangible, Heather, we can work to put something like that on the CAN COVID-19 resource page. Yeah. We're burning the clock here.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah, please do.
The other thing that we're doing is we're co-creating the design of the in-person programs with our team. So we're asking them what they're comfortable with, and then we're going back to our districts with what works and kind of Venn diagramming those things and finding what works in the middle. So for example, in one of our smaller districts, which we are doing some in-person, we've kind of been in negotiations is a strong word, right? Friendly conversations about how many students on campus, where we want those programs to be located, those kinds of things. And a lot of that's been informed by the staff that already serve in that district and in that contract. And we've adjusted based on their recommendations and where they feel safe. Things like, we want access to indoor and outdoor classrooms because our staff feel safer being outdoors, and the data supports that right now as far as transmission rates. But also even ratios. Our staff made it clear that they really didn't want to see more than 40 kids on a campus, we're still operating within stable pods and those kinds of things, right? So we're tracking best practices, but we're also listening to them, what they feel comfortable, so that they're co-creators in what these programs look like, because they're ultimately going to be implementing them. And so that I think is really important, not just through surveys and town halls, but in revisiting the design of how these work based on their recommendations and their guidance.
So these are very concrete ways that you've demonstrated that you're caring for your staff and supporting them. You can't get on a webinar anywhere and not hear someone talk about trauma-informed practice, acknowledging that our young people are coming through trauma of varying degrees. And Danny, you mentioned earlier the importance of relationship building. We know the research, the science of learning and development tells us that one of the significant protective factors is relationship in terms of healing and neuroscience and preparing the mind to be open to learn, but also to heal. Same with our young adults. So you're doing a lot of amazing things. Anything you want to say before I turn it back to Heather for a wrap?
Helen, Danny, do you have?
I just want to say thank you for the ongoing advocacy for all of expanded learning programs and the fire chats. We watch, we see, and we hear all of the great work that's happening. And so thank you very much on behalf of our Woodcraft Rangers team and expanded learning team, because we know that as the message changes sometimes from the governor to other, from the state, everyone's making their adjustments. And so to make it work, we all continue to work together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. The only thing I would add is I would just encourage folks. I think what we've done, our mantra has kind of been, we're just going to make the next best decision with the information that we have. And it's not going to keep it, right? The paralysis, it can certainly set in, and it's difficult sometimes to make those decisions, but that's been our approach from day one, is just, we will make the next best decision in interest of both our families and our staff, and that's how and we don't wait. We just we continue to make those decisions with the most information we have, and just I would encourage people to be proactive, because so far we've found that when we do what we feel is in best interest of families and students, most of the reception has been grateful. Folks are glad that we've been able to test something and we have a solution. So far that's worked for us, and I would just I would encourage folks to be as proactive as possible, because I think everyone's looking for solutions right now.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Julie and Helen and Danny, for joining us today and sharing all the amazing work you've been doing. And, thank you for not just a commitment to your students, but to your families and your staff. That was very apparent as you were all sharing today. And so we really appreciate you all and the work you're doing. And, we know there will, as you noted, Julie, there will continue to be things changing and evolving, and there's going to be more questions about all the information we put out. So we're going to continue these conversations, but thank you all again very much for joining us today. And Michael, any final thoughts before we sign off?
As always, I just want to say that one of the things that I'm hearing is a lot of anxiety, like if schools need waivers, do expanded learning programs need waivers to open? What's this? First of all, there's no waiver for expanded learning. And I can just tell you, the process for at any point doing anything in person with children is going to be done county by county. It's going to be different. So be in dialogue with your school district, with your county health folks, be informed. There's not like step A, step B, and step C from the state of California. You've got to be in relationship with your local leadership. And then just recognize that we hold this amazing, hard tension. That if we don't provide the kind of support that our most vulnerable children need to them right now, it's a moral issue. They will be left behind in distance learning. I can tell you, we know this, that there are children who just left to distance learning on their own will fall behind. It's a moral issue if we don't. And if we don't support our staff with training, safety, protection, nurturing, support, with all they deserve, it's a moral issue. We got to hold both. There's no easy answer for it. There's no clear win here. There's no clear roadmap for this, but we got to just hold both of those. So I would encourage everyone, just like Woodcraft has done, and they've demonstrated that they're holding both of those, the care and nurturing and support that every child needs and deserves, and the care, nurture, protection, and support that every staff person needs and deserves. That's inspiring. Thank you for what you're doing, everyone. Woodcraft, blessings. See you next week.
Thanks.
Thank you.